Welcome to Nothing But Nets. Got some big news, big rumors, not news, big rumors. The San Antonio Spurs are interested in Cam Johnson apparently, and there are rumors circulating that Cam Johnson will be sent over to the Nets for. I'm sorry, Cam Johnson will be sent over to the Spurs for Keldon Johnson. So a Cam Johnson for Keldon Johnson trade. This is an interesting trade because I do believe that the Nets, no matter what happens, before the trading deadline, need to trade Cam Johnson. He doesn't really fit in here. The timing, the contract, this style of play, they need to trade Cam Johnson, who is 28 years old, and they need to bring in younger pieces, more versatile pieces, and they need to give Jalen Wilson all of Cam Johnson's minutes. I don't see a role for him here. I'd rather play Bogdanovic than him if you're going to play a veteran. I'd rather play Finney Smith than him, although I think Finney Smith needs to get traded too. You need to keep some veterans, and I do think those veterans that they're going to keep are Schroeder and Bogdanovic. I think Schroeder and Bogdanovic, because they're both on expiring contracts, are going to be kept. And I think that at some point, I think Dorian Finney-Smith before the season starts, and I'm not sure about Cam Johnson, but I would like this trade to happen. I'm going to get into why I want this trade to happen. So Cam Johnson is a 28-year-old 3-4. He's a 4. He plays like a 3. He's 6'8". He plays like he's 6'5". He's a wing and 3. He's a 3 and D guy, kind of minus the D. So he's really just a 3 guy, and he just stands in the corner. There's not a whole lot to his game. He's not what he's being paid for. He's being paid $24 million a year. Some people look at it as his contract as it's good. I'm just going to be honest with you. If you can't tell already, I'm not a fan of Cam Johnson's game. I think he's a dime a dozen player. I think he offers you very, very limited, very, very little. I think his game is very, very limited. I don't think he's a good defender. I don't think he can cover 4s. Like if you had to stick him on Julius Randle, he's going to get bodied all day. If you had to stick him on quicker wings, he's going to get beaten off the dribble. I'm just not a fan of his game. I think he's a great guy. If you watched him on JJ's Old Man in the 3, he's likable, he's smart, he's intelligent. I wish him the best of luck. I just wish it somewhere else. They do have to move on from him. Jalen Wilson needs to get those minutes. We don't know what we have in Jalen Wilson. We know what we have in Cam Johnson. We know that he's overpaid. Some people look at the contract as if it's a good contract, and you define that team, and you need to trade Cam Johnson to that team for what you can get for him. Cam Johnson can't finish at the rim. He's soft as Charmin. He doesn't rebound. He doesn't pass. He stands in the corner, and he shoots 3s. It's not a knock on him. It's what he is. 28 years old. He's not going to develop offensive game at 28. He doesn't take the ball to the hole. He doesn't get the N1s. He doesn't finish. He doesn't handle the ball. He's not a playmaker. All he does is shoot the ball. That's all he does. Now, he shoots the ball fairly well. I want to get into that. I'm going to start to break down and kind of compare their numbers because there's a lot to be desired for Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson made his mark playing with Booker and Chris Paul and Bridges, and he was, a 4th option on the team, Ayton, on this really, really good team. And he got open shots, and he made the open shots. He's never had to carry a team. When he did have to have a bigger role with Bridges when he was still on Phoenix and on this year, you see his efficiency drops. His numbers drop. He's not a guy that creates his own shot. He thrives on getting open shots, on ball movement and getting open shots. That's not what the Nets thrive on. He's not going to be a part of their long-term scheme. He's 28. They're going to be bad this year. They're going to be bad probably again next year. And then they can start to look to rebuild 2 years down the road. Well, he's going to be 30, and this is not going to be a lot. There's not anything. He's not going to get better. It doesn't fit here. It's just time to move on. If there's a contender, if there's anyone who wants Cam Johnson, move Cam Johnson. The good news for the Nets is there is a team that seems very interested in Cam Johnson. There seems to be a couple of teams that seem to be interested in Cam Johnson. One of those teams, and there are trade rumors circulating, are the San Antonio Spurs and Keldon Johnson. They are looking to move Keldon Johnson. Perhaps he doesn't fit into what they have. I'm not sure why. I think Keldon Johnson is a very underrated player. I think he's a much more complete player. I don't think he's a stationary shooter. And I think when push comes to shove, he's very similar. Like his numbers, if given the same role as Cam Johnson, his shooting numbers aren't going to be much worse. They probably won't be quite as good, but I think they're going to be close. Cam Johnson had efficient seasons when he was asked to play a role. He was in 22-23 asked to be the leader, and he scored 22 points a game. His efficiency dropped to 51.6 effective field goal percentage. Last year, he was given a secondary role again, used off the bench, and his efficiency spiked again. He's a good offensive player. He rebounds his position. He's a 2-3. He's 6'5". He's a 2-3, 6'5", 220. He's physically strong. He has a good body. He can defend. He's a much improved defensive player that can guard wings, and he can guard bigger guys. He can guard 2, 3s, and 4s. But I don't really think Cam Johnson can guard any of them. He's got a mid-range game. He comes off pin downs. He curls around. They ran this all the time in San Antonio. He's about an average mid-range jump shot shooter. He can finish out the hole. He's got float games. He's physically strong. He's a high IQ player. There's so much to like about him. He's a better passer, a better rebounder than Cam Johnson. The only thing that Cam Johnson really has on him is that he's taller and he's a slightly better shooter. But like I said, if you give Keldon Johnson those looks, if Keldon Johnson can just stand in the corner and shoot open threes, his percentages are going to go up too. And if Cam Johnson had to carry a team, if they had to run an offense through Cam Johnson, his efficiency is going to bottom out. So what you have in Keldon Johnson is a more complete offensive player, a better rebounder, a better passer, and a better defender. Yet he is smaller. And I understand what this means for the Nets. And you're going to say, well, the Nets are already small. You can't worry about that right now, right? If we're starting Keldon Johnson, and you're starting Schroeder at the 1, Cam Thomas at the 2, and Keldon Johnson at the 3, yes, you're very small. Then you can start Clowney and Claxton, and there's your size. There's going to be some defensive liabilities, right? And then you bring Jalen Wilson off the bench, and that's something that I like a lot. You can bring Jalen Wilson and Bogdanovic and Day'Ron Sharpe in off the bench, and Keon Johnson, and that's kind of your rotation for now. Look, the Nets are going to experiment with a lot of things. You could try Cam Thomas at the 1, Keldon Johnson at the 2, and then you can put Jalen Wilson at the 3. There's lots of things that you can do. Keldon Johnson can play a lot of different roles. He can also create his own shot, and that's what the Nets need. Cam Johnson cannot create his own shot. It's not what he does. He just doesn't fit in here, right? I'm assuming you're going to be trading DFS. My assumption is DFS is going to be gone before the season starts. I truly believe that. Cam Johnson, I was up in the air. I was like, maybe he's gone. I think he'll be gone by the deadline. I don't know if he'll be gone by the start of the season. Then this trade rumor started circulating, and at first I said, why would San Antonio do this? Well, Cam Johnson's got playoff experience. Cam Johnson is bigger. If you look at San Antonio's roster, if you think he's good, if you view him like Sean Marks does, and where does Sean Marks come from? He comes from San Antonio. So maybe there's something about their system that they value him more than I do. It's possible. But they got Chris Paul. They got Harrison Barnes. They're going with veterans. Can they match Harrison Barnes? They have Devin Vassell. They obviously have Wembanyama. They got Jeremy Sochan. They've got some players. They've got some pieces. Zach Collins. where City Cisco, they may be able to compete. And I'm not sure what you do with all of these guys. But if you're going to start Chris Paul at the point guard, and you're going to start Devin Vassell at the 2, and you're going to start Harrison Barnes at the 3, well, Keldon Johnson is now a 6th man. But what do we do with Trey Jones? What do we do with Champagnie? What do we do? What do they do with all these guys? They've got a lot of guys, guards, like we mentioned, City Cisco, guys they want to develop, guys that guys they want to use in different roles. Where does that leave Cam Johnson? It probably leaves. Where does it leave Keldon Johnson? It probably leaves Keldon Johnson without a regular spot. He's kind of the odd man out there. They want to use him off the bench, but they want to give these other guys minutes too. And you can't use Keldon Johnson as a 4, but you can use Cam Johnson as a 4. So perhaps Cam Johnson makes more sense. Cam Johnson may make more sense for the Spurs. I don't agree with it. It's not me making this argument. I'm trying to see it from their perspective. There's never a situation. I don't care what your roster is. I think Keldon Johnson is that much better than Cam Johnson that there's never a situation under any circumstance that I would take Cam Johnson over Keldon Johnson. That's how much better Keldon Johnson is than Cam Johnson. If you look at their stats over the last 3 seasons, Keldon Johnson has averaged 18 points a game, 6 rebounds, 2.6 assists. Cam Johnson has averaged 13.5 points, 4.6 rebounds. 13.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists. So Keldon Johnson is just better across the board. Keldon Johnson has 46-36 shooting splits. Not quite as good as Cam Johnson, who has 46-41 shooting splits, but it's close enough when you factor in everything else that Keldon Johnson gives you. And if you want to say, well, Cam Johnson is taller, he can play the 4. Yes, he can play the 4. He just can't play it well. He's short to Sharman. He can't rebound. He can't defend 4s, right? So, yes, he can play the 4, but he just can't play it well. Keldon Johnson, although 3 inches shorter, is a better rebounder. He's a better rebounder, and he's a better passer. He's a better playmaker. He's a better shot creator. He scores in the mid-range better. There are so many boxes that Keldon Johnson checks that Cam Johnson does not check. So Cam Johnson, needs to be traded. He needs to be traded at some point this season. Not necessarily before the season starts. I'm fine with starting the season with him. But he needs to be traded before the deadline. He's got 2 years after this. So he's got 3 years, this 1 and 2 more on his deal. So it's not urgent that you trade. He's not going to lose value every day he's gone. You're just like Mikal Bridges didn't. So there is no rush to trade him. You trade him when the right trade comes along. And I'm hearing that fan saying, what is the total package that you want for Cam Johnson? Look, Cam Johnson's not good. Cam Johnson is not on a good contract. Cam Johnson is a dime a dozen player who's a pretty good shooter, an above average shooter, and that's it. He's not a good defender. He's not a good rebounder. He's not a shot creator. He's not a playmaker. He's an above average shooter. That's all he is. That's it. He's not a great shooter. He's not Ray Allen, right? He's a good shooter, an above average shooter. That's all that he offers you. If you can move him and I understand why I was against the contract when they gave it to him, but I understand why they gave it to him. They wanted Bridges and him were friends. It was going to work. Bridges is gone. Cam Johnson's got to go too. There's no point in having Cam Johnson here anymore. It doesn't make any sense, and he's just going to take minutes away. I'd rather play Bogdanovic than Cam Johnson. Bogdanovic is better than Cam Johnson. He's a better shot creator, right? He creates his own shot better. He's a better offensive player, and he's going to shoot just as well. So I'd rather have Bogdanovic. Neither guy is part of the long-term plans here at their age. Neither guy is part of the rebuild. Bogdanovic is a veteran. He's been around a long time. He played a similar role with the Pistons, right? So just keep Bogdanovic and move Cam Johnson. You can get more for Cam Johnson anyway because he's a lot younger than Bogdanovic, right? We saw last year, but Bogdanovic didn't carry a ton of value, especially in this offseason. So Bogdanovic is a nice piece for the Nets to have. Like I said, you have to have some veterans. You can't have old kids. And I think the 2 veterans they're going to have here are obviously Schroeder and Bogdanovic. This is a good opportunity for the Nets to start to to get Jalen Wilson minutes. But in order to get Jalen Wilson minutes, you need to get the guys that would take minutes from Jalen Wilson and get rid of them. And that would be Dorian Finney-Smith, who I think they'll have no problem trading, and Cam Johnson, who they may have a little bit of difficulty trading him because they're going to overvalue him. What you need to do is find another team that overvalues Cam Johnson. San Antonio looks like they overvalue Cam Johnson. Move him. And when I'm asked, what is the total package? If I just get Keldon Johnson and I get no draft capital, I get no seconds, no future first, no pick swap. If I just swap Keldon Johnson for Cam Johnson, I save about $5 million in salary, right? Cam Johnson's making about $24 million a year for the next 3 years, each of the next 3 years. Keldon Johnson's going to make about 19. So I'm going to save about $5 million, and I'm getting a better player, a much better player. So no, I don't need to add anything to this trade. If you're just willing to swap me, make the big Johnson swap. Just swap Johnsons. I'm good. I shake your hand. I sign on the line that is dotted, and we're done. All right, y'all. I will be back later in the week. I'm going to try to, deep in this offseason, I'm going to try to give you 3 or 4 shows a week. I'm going to try to partner up with other people in the Nets community. So stay in tune for that. It is July 24th, 2024, from Texas to the world. Thank you, and God bless.